Hi everybody, it's Mr. McNeil here, and in this lesson we're going to look at solving equations with multiplication and division. Now if you're working from home, before we start, can you make sure you're sitting somewhere comfortable, you're sitting somewhere calm and quiet and in a good atmosphere to learn. Get yourself a pen and some paper, because at the end of the lesson I'll be asking you to take a photograph of your work and send it to your teacher for extra achievement points. So if you haven't really got yourself sorted out with pen and paper, can you pause the video and go and get that done? So your learning objective is to solve equations with multiplication and division. Your success criteria is to determine the operation between the unknown and the constant. So the operation is add, take away, multiply, divide, and we're looking at multiplying and dividing today. The unknown is the letter, the X or the Y, and the constant is the number. It's called a constant because it never changes. We're going to apply the inverse operation. So if you've watched lesson 1, you would know that inverse means opposite. And then we're going to solve the equation to find the value of the unknown. So your answer will look something similar to the last lesson. So it would be x equals 5, x equals minus 6, x equals 4 over 9, something like that. So there are 6 questions, knowledge retrieval. These are things that you should already know and be sort of practicing. So pause the video and do those 6 questions. Give yourself about 10 minutes. So here's the answers. Mark your work with your green pen. Check that you've got them all right, and if there's something that you haven't got done, just correct them. So just a recap of inverse operations. The inverse of multiply is divide, and the inverse of divide is multiply. Example 1. We've got an equation here, 8a equals 41. Remember in algebra, a letter beside a number means multiplied. So 8 times a is 41. So what do we have to do to get what has happened to a? Well, it's been multiplied by 8. So the opposite of multiply by 8 is divide by 8. And remember, whatever we do to the left hand side, we have to do to the right hand side. Okay, so we're going to do that. So we have to do 41 divided by 8. Now when you've got fractions in equations, you can leave it like that as a fraction, or we can turn it into a mixed number. So a equals 5 and 1/8. The next one, 9a equals 9. So a has been multiplied by 9, so we're going to divide by 9. So if we divide the left hand side by 9, we have to divide the right hand side by 9. So a equals 1. Okay, so you pause the video now and you try these two. Okay, so hopefully you've known that you have to divide by 5. So you get 32 over 5, and that simplifies to 6 2/5. And in the last one, a is 0, because 0 divided by 3 is 0. Okay, on this next example, we've got 9a equals minus 1. So we're going to need to divide both sides by 9. And because 9 doesn't go into 1, we can write it as a fraction. So a equals minus 1 divided by 9. Now you can keep the answer like that, where it says minus 1 over 9, or you can put the minus in front of the fraction. Minus 1 over 9, both is the same. In this next example, we've got minus 9a equals minus 1. We're going to divide both sides by minus 9. That would mean that would leave us a equals, and it's negative 1 or minus 1, whichever way you want to say it, divided by minus 9, and and a minus divided by a minus gives a positive, so it's 1 over 9. So you pause the video and attempt these two questions here. Okay, you should have got divide by 3. A equals minus 6 over 3, which is minus 2. So A equals minus 2. Again, divide both sides by minus 3. So A equals minus 6 divided by minus 3, and a minus divided by a minus is a positive, so A equals 2. Slightly different on this example. 9A equals the square root of 100. So we have to do some work before we can solve the equation. We have to evaluate square root of 100. So the square root of 100 is 10. So we can say 9A equals 10. We think to ourselves, what has happened to the A? It's been multiplied by 9. The inverse of multiply is divide. So we're going to divide left hand side by 9 and divide right hand side by 9. So A equals 10 over 9. That's a top heavy fraction. So you could also write 1 and 1/9. On the next one, 10A equals the square root of 100. Well, we know from doing this one that the square root of 100 is 10. So 10A equals 10. Divide both sides by 10. That gives you A equals 1. Okay, so you pause the video and you try these two. You should have got 3A equals 6. Divide both sides by 3 and A equals 2. And on the second we do 6A equals 6, so therefore A equals 1. Okay. This example, we've got a bracket, minus 7 and squared. So the squared is outside the bracket. That means we have to not just square 7, but we have to square negative 7. Now, using the rules of negative numbers, negative 7 times negative 7 will be positive 49. So we can rewrite this equation as 10A equals 49. And then we can look at it and say, right, okay, what's happened to A? It's been multiplied by 10. So we need to divide by 10 and divide by 10. And you might spot straight away that 49 divided by 10 is 4.9. But you can write 49 over 10. And that's a top heavy fraction. So we can change it to a mixed number. How many 10s go into 49? Well, there's 4 10s in 49 and 9 left over. Or you could write 4.9. This one has the same, minus 7 squared. So our equation is minus 8 equals positive 49. So we're going to divide the left hand side and the right hand side by negative 8. And 8 doesn't go into 49, so we can write it as a fraction. 49 over negative 8. And we can change it into a mixed number, minus 6 and 1/8. Okay, so you pause the video and try these two questions. Okay, if you're ready for answers, I'm going to give you them in a moment, or you can just continue working, but pause the video. The answers, we would have got 6A equals 81. Divide both sides by 6. 81 divided by 6 is 13.5. So you could, it depends what the question might say, whether it might tell you to simplify your answer, or it might tell you to write your answer as a mixed number. Okay, and in the next one, we've got minus 9A equals positive 81, because minus 9 times minus 9 is positive 81. Divide by minus 9, and that gives you that A equals negative 9. Okay. Here are some questions. So you pause the video and give yourself 10 to 15 minutes to do these questions. Make sure you write your answers neat and especially if you're going to email them to your teacher to look at, but write them neat, show your working out so that you clearly understand the procedure. Okay, so if you're ready for answers, Take 2 minutes, pause the video again and correct your work. If you've got any issues, rewind the video and see where you went wrong. Here's another set of questions. So pause the video again, give yourself 10 minutes to do these questions. Just remember that there's brackets around these negative numbers. Okay, if you're ready for answers. here are the answers to those questions. So pause the video while you mark your work and make sure you've got them all right. Okay, this time we're going to move on now to division or multiplication. Okay, this time there's a has been divided by 4, so it's been written as a fraction. I could also say a divided by 4, a divided by 4 equals 9. I could also say that you could look at it like that. So the opposite of divide is multiply. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to multiply both sides by 4 because it's a divided by 4. So now you have to multiply by 4, and that will get rid of that 4. But if you want to do that to the left hand side, you have to do it to the right hand side. So a equals 36, and we can check that. What's 36 divided by 4? It's 9, so that means that's right. This time we've got 1 equals a divided by 4, so again we're going to multiply by 4, so the answer is simply a equals 4. So you pause the video and you try the next 2 questions. Okay, you should have got multiply by 6 to get b equals 18, and multiply by 3 to get b equals 18 as well. So you can see that we've been determining the operation. The operation was divide, the inverse of divide is multiply, and we've used that to solve. We've got minus 5 equals a over 4. So this time the a over 4 is on the right hand side of the equation. If you feel more comfortable, you can turn it round to say a equals 4 equals minus 5. That's what I would personally do, my preference. Or you can just start solving it. So determining the operation between the unknown and the constant, so it's divide. The inverse of divide is multiply. Okay, so 4 times negative 5 is negative 20. So a equals negative 20. On the next I do, we've got a divided by 4, so we're going to multiply both sides by 4, and to get a equals negative 12, because 4 times 3 is 12. So I'm going to pause the video, you're going to pause the video, and you're going to do these next 2 questions. Okay, you should have got multiply both sides by 3 and b equals negative 18. Again, multiply both sides by 3 and b equals negative 24. Okay, so if you haven't got any of these 2 correct, just check it wasn't your times tables, or check that you got the operation correct. This one here, we've got a decimal number, but we look at the unknown. The unknown is a, and it's been divided by 4. So the inverse of divide by 4 is multiply by 4. So we multiply left hand side and right hand side by 4. So a is what? 4 times 3 is 12, so 4 times 0.3 is 1.2. On the second one, b has been divided by 3, so the inverse is to multiply by 3. So b equals 2.4. So you have a go at these questions. Pause the video and you've got 10 minutes. Give yourself 10 minutes. Okay, here are the answers. So correct your work, pause the video while you're doing it, and then press play when you're ready to move on. This one here, we've got fractions on both left hand side and right hand side. So it looks a little bit more complicated, but just look at the A, the unknown. The unknown is being divided by 4, that's all. Okay, so the opposite of divide by 4, the inverse, is multiply by 4. So we're going to multiply both sides of this equation by 4. So that means that A equals 1 over 9 times 4. And remember, to multiply a fraction by a whole number, we pretend it's 4 over 1. So it's 1 times 4 all over 9 times 1, which is 4 over 9. Okay, again, this time the unknown is on the other side, the right hand side. You can swap it around if you want, or you can keep it like that, but the A has been divided by 4, and we just do the opposite, we multiply by 4. So A is 1 over 8, sorry, that 9 shouldn't be there, 1 over 8 times 4, which is 4 over 8, which equals a half. Okay, so the answer to that question is A equals a half. You're going to pause the video and you're going to have a look at these two questions. So press pause now and press play when you're ready to start. Okay, hopefully you've done the two questions. You should have got multiplied by 3. So A equals 3 over 7. Okay, that should say 1 over 7 by 3, not 1 over 9. So A equals 3 over 7. And this one, multiply both sides by 3. 1 over 6 times 3 is 3 over 6, which is a half. So the answer to that is A equals a half. In this example, you've got 7/8 equals A over 4. So the A has been divided by 4, the inverse is multiplied by 4. So 7 over 8 times 4 is 28 over 8. And that's 3 and 4 over 8, which is 3.5. So either of these answers would be acceptable. This one here is 1 and 7/8 equals A over 4. We need to turn this into improper fraction by multiplying 8 by 1 and adding 7. So we get 15 over 8 equals A over 4. Now we can solve it. We can multiply both sides by 4. So we get 15 over 8 times 4, which is 60 over 8. And 8 sevens are 56 with 4 left over. So 7 and 4/8, which is 7.5. So you pause the video now and try these two here. Okay, you should have got multiply both sides by 3, and your answer should have been 15 over 6, which equals 2.5. On this one, you should have turned that into a top heavy fraction. So you should have got 11 over 6 equals A over 3. You're going to multiply both sides by 3 and you get 33 over 6, which is 5.5. Again, you need to turn this into a top heavy fraction. So 8 times 2 is 16 and 4 is 20. So that would be 20 over 8 equals A over 8. And if you've kind of worked smart, you can see that the both of them are divided by 8. So they would probably cancel out, but let's follow the procedure to see. Multiply both sides by 8 and you get 8 equals 20. Okay? Because it would have been 160 divided by 8, which is cancelled by 8, but when you multiply that by 8, it cancels out. So you have a go at this one. Pause the video and try this one. You should have got minus 9 over 6 equals A over 6 times by 6, so A equals negative 9. Okay, so the answer there was A equals negative 9. Here are some questions for you to do. So give yourself 10 minutes, pause the video while you do them, make sure your work's neat so you can take a photograph of it and email it to your teacher. Okay, by now you should have finished. So here are the answers. Pause the video again and mark your work. Okay, that's the end of the lesson. So by now you should know how to determine the operation. Okay, these are one-step equations, so you only have to do it once. Apply the inverse of that operation and solve it to find the value of the unknown. So again, make sure you photograph your work and send it in to your teacher by email for some achievement points. Okay, thank you very much for listening. Goodbye, and we'll see you on the next video.